This year we'll have more than 30,000 new immigrants who come to Israel. It's the record of the last 12 years.
Israel's politicians are convinced the Jewish future is only within Israel.
If we want to remain a democratic state, we have to have a majority of Jews between Jordan and the Mediterranean.
On a le droit d'exister, on a le droit d'être là, comme eux ont le droit d'être là.
Maybe this century will be the last century when Jews live in Europe.
So we're here at Charles de Gaulle Airport in Paris. In a couple of hours, about 200 French Jews are going to be taking a one-way flight to Israel. So we're here to find out why they're leaving France. Tell me about your decision to move to Israel.
Il y a plusieurs raisons. Déjà, ça faisait longtemps qu'on le voulait pour les enfants. On sent une montée comme ça des gens qui sont de plus en plus... ils observent, on se regarde, le fait de porter la kippa. Je suis français, je suis juif, qu'est-ce que je fais, où est-ce que je me situe? Là-bas, ils seront juifs, pleins et entiers.
Last year, immigration to Israel reached its highest level in over a decade. 30,000 people made the leap, a record 8,000 of them from France.
We have something like 50 to 200 persons each day. It's the biggest summer in the story of Jew Aliyah for France. Most of them, they are family with children, because for them, most important thing is to take the children in the place that will be true for them.
Many of the flights bringing Europeans to Tel Aviv are organized by the Jewish Agency for Israel, which runs joint programs with the Israeli government.
We're just walking into the welcome ceremony for the 200 people who have arrived.
Jewish people who make Aliyah, the Hebrew term for immigration to Israel, get a free one-way flight to Tel Aviv and then a load of other handouts from the Israeli government. Temporary housing, monthly cash payments, and mortgage breaks.
Bienvenue à tous en Israël. Dans quelques minutes, vous deviendrez officiellement des citoyens israéliens. Et vous allez agrandir la nation d'Israël.
This is made possible by Israel's law of return, which gives anyone with a Jewish grandparent the right to full Israeli citizenship.
So what moment did you and your family decide to leave France and why?
Honnêtement, c'est depuis les attentats, je pense, au mois de janvier, de Charlie Hebdo et de Hypercacher. Ça a été le... Bon, on y pensait, quoi qu'il arrive, hein, on y pensait depuis quelques années déjà, mais ça a été vraiment le déclic dessus. Même si la France essaye de nous protéger par l'armée devant les synagogues, devant les écoles juives, etc. Pour l'instant, je pense que ça suffit, mais il y a un moment donné où ça va craquer. Il vaut mieux anticiper le départ plutôt que de partir sous la contrainte.
Following a number of terror attacks in Europe last year, several targeting Jewish institutions, politicians and religious leaders are predicting an exodus of Jewish people from Europe.
שוב נרצחו על אדמת אירופה יהודים רק בגלל היותם יהודים. אנחנו נערכים לקליטת עלייה המונית מאירופה. אנחנו קוראים לקליטת עלייה המונית מאירופה.
But critics argue that Israel is taking advantage of fear in Europe by encouraging Jewish people to leave their homes.
Demography is not just technical social science for Israel. It's got a kind of ideological dimension to it that we in Europe are not accustomed to. There has been a very concerted action with respect to French Jewry to try to facilitate their coming to Israel. Every Jew who arrives is basically more human potential for the notion of the Jewish state.
Aliyah is not new. For decades, the Jewish Agency for Israel has been promoting and facilitating it, often in response to global crises. We wanted to investigate these claims of an exodus and Israel's role in the movement. So we went to Ashdod to meet Jewish Agency Chairman Natan Sharansky.
there are a lot of reports now claiming that there's going to be some sort of exodus of Jewish people, and so I guess I'm trying to figure out what's true, what's not.
It is happening. More than 2,000 people came in these last 3 weeks, and this speed keeps growing. We this year will have more than 30,000 new immigrants who come to Israel. It's the record of the last 12 years.
Can you understand why that, in a way, seems sort of crazy from an outside perspective, to leave a place like Paris because it's unsafe and then to move to Israel?
France has great laws against anti-Semitism, but it's not about laws and it's not about physical protection. Right. It's about whether you can feel yourself comfortable, secure at home. And they find out that they feel by themselves much more at home when they come to Israel.
We joined Sharansky on a visit to what's called an absorption center, one of many across the country where new immigrants can live and study Hebrew for their first 6 months in Israel.
We're just heading into a Hebrew class.
Why do you come from St. Petersburg or from Moscow here when there are all these situations and feel that here it is more secure?
In Russia, we don't have this government to protect us. Everyone solves their problem by themselves. And here it's not like that. Even here it's milchama or war, whatever. Everyone is under protection. You've got a shelter. You've got an army person who will protect you and save you from the very acute situation.
באיזה תוכנית?
היה בפרויקט רופאים, עברתי מבחן, ועכשיו מחפשת עבודה.
מזל טוב.
יש רישיון לעשות.
יש רישיון.
איזה סוג של רופא?
אני רופאת נשים.
לא יכול להיות שלא תמצאי מקום. אני מאוד בתשובה נשמע.
Here can still be somewhere else. A place where the script is still unwritten. A land of milk and honey.
The Israeli government knows it has to work hard to attract foreigners and is constantly investing in recruitment. Ads like this focus on the sun and beaches of Tel Aviv and look past darker news events in the rest of the country, all to convince prospective immigrants that life can be safe and prosperous in Israel. The Jewish Agency has an operating budget of nearly $400 million a year, coming from global Jewish foundations, charities, evangelical Christians who support Israel, and corporations like IKEA.
And look your future in the eye.
We went to the headquarters of the Jewish Agency in Jerusalem to learn about its plans for the Jewish people of Europe.
These are historical from different stages of Israeli history, our Zionist propaganda, how it's working.
Is the Jewish Agency, is the Israeli government actively planning to relocate, say, hundreds of thousands of Jewish people from Europe? Are there plans in place?
At this moment, we are discussing plans for the next 50,000 French Jews moving to Israel, what can easily happen in the next 5 or maybe even 3 years.
What's going on in Europe that you think is pushing people to Israel?
The new anti-Semitism or the new population of Europe is very strong, and sometimes it goes to the extremes with terror activity.
What do you mean when you talk about a new anti-Semitism?
Well, new anti-Semitism which was brought with millions of new citizens of Europe who came from the Middle East.
Muslim citizens.
Well, Muslims, I try to be politically correct, and of course overwhelming majority of Muslims are loyal citizens, but anti-Semitic prejudices are very strong. I believe maybe this century will be the last century when Jews live in Europe, and the Jews lived in Europe for more than 2,000 years.
Critics would say that maybe some of your predictions about the 21st century and Jews leaving Europe are exaggerated.
I hope that I'm wrong. But I'm saying that it can be the last century. I say it as a tragedy, not as a triumph. If they have to leave Europe, I want them to come to Israel.
It's true that there have been high-profile anti-Semitic incidents in France. In the summer of 2014, during yet another round of fighting between Israel and Gaza, several anti-Israel demonstrations turned into angry mobs. In the suburbs of Paris, pro-Palestinian demonstrators attacked Jewish-owned businesses and surrounded a synagogue. But some observers think that Aliyah advocates are grossly exaggerating the dangers of Europe.
I think the frightened Jew of yore is not really present anymore. Since the Charlie Hebdo attacks, the French political elites have clearly come out on behalf of the fact that the Jews belong in France.
Vous, Français de confession juive, votre place est ici, chez vous.
But Israel's politicians are convinced that the Jewish future is only within Israel. Israel has certainly, from the word go, looked upon migration and arrival not only as an almost theological gathering of the Jews around the world, but also as a demographic vital measure. It is uncontestable that the Jewish state and its various bureaucracies are counting on a massive aliyah by the French Jews and by the Ukrainian Jews as well.
For Aliyah to have a substantial impact on the ground, Jewish immigrants will have to come from countries beyond France. And they are. They're coming from Ukraine in increasing numbers. We went to eastern Ukraine to see the exodus in real time, and we met up with Sharansky, who has, in the chaos of the Ukrainian war, found an opportunity for Israel.
So where have you just been?
I was in Kyiv yesterday. We are there overlooking the operation all over Ukraine, which is now close to 7,000 people living in Ukraine this year.
7,000 leaving this year?
This year, yeah.
We traveled with Sharansky to a Jewish agency center on the outskirts of the city.
Здравствуйте. Как вас звать? Меня зовут Наталья. Наталья. Вы прямо из Мариуполя и уже готовы ехать?
Ну да.
Да. Уже все.
Завтра улетают. Они уже завтра улетают. Ну, конечно, грустно расставаться, это близкие, родственники. Ну, страх. Страх, конечно, из-за детей, думаем.
And why have you decided to move to Israel?
Есть такая возможность, поэтому...
Нет, жалоб нет, абсолютно здесь.
Готовите документы, занимаетесь?
Да.
Have you seen a lot of fighting since the war began last year?
Тоже попадал под обстрел артиллерийский. На моих глазах женщину разорвала, мужчину убила, 2 женщин разорвала. Ну, а меня ударной волной, как люди говорят. Ну, прожить столько лет и раз как лист бумаги разорвать, а потом склеить его, это уже не целый лист бумаги.
Have you ever been to Israel?
Ни разу. Будучи еще маленьким ребенком, таким 5-летним, бабушка рассказывала, что Всевышний по всему лицу земли расселил еврейский народ. И когда-то, внучок, он их соберет. Ну вот случилось.
The people who end up here, are a lot of them practicing Jews? Do a lot of them have a strong connection to Judaism? Or?
Some of them are religious Jews. As I say that now, when the situation is very hard, we firstly think and understand that because of being Jews, we have a place that are ready to take us and taking care of us. Sometimes they are looking for their identity, and our activities here is not only Aliyah, it's both connecting them to Israel and the communities.
The thing about Ukraine is that a lot of people with Jewish ancestors don't necessarily feel Jewish or even qualify as fully Jewish under religious law. We traveled east to meet a family that had never given much thought to their Jewish heritage. In fact, the family members spent most of their lives as practicing Christians. But Tatiana, the mother, has one Jewish grandfather, and that qualifies all of them for Israeli passports.
Hello.
Hi.
Скажи привет.
What's your name? Am I right that tonight you're leaving this home?
Вот, и в 9:25 у нас где-то самолет вечера. Ну, нервничаем, переживаем.
And are you leaving because of what's going on here?
Да, ну, по большому счету и там войны есть. Ну, да, в Израиле. Все равно там тоже воюют на окраинах. Ну, и тут то же самое практически. Ну, Ничего такого страшного нету насчет войны. Это просто, что, ну, детей, чтобы было будущее какое-то у них. Ну, в Украине, я смотрю, что в ближайшие лет 15-20 тут вообще никакого будущего нема. Ну, ни работы, ничего нема.
How did you know that you would be able to move to Israel, that legally you would have that ability?
И первое, куда мы обратились, это в Сахнут, к митнику Александру. Давал телефоны, давал визитки, оказывал нам материальную помощь. И нам назначили встречу в посольство. Вот. Радости, конечно, было для нашей семьи. Есть кофе, да?
Есть. Сколько сахара тебе?
Мы вообще верующие люди, мы в церковь ходим. Ну, как у нас бабушка, вот Женя, она вышла замуж за дедушку. И у дедушки родители были верующие, ну, христиане. Вот. И у нас с детства Библия в доме. Мы знаем историю. Мы знаем, ну, в нашем городе просто нету синагог.
Are you going to be sad to leave your friends today?
Ну, чуть-чуть, да, то що тут живуть мої родственники, і я буду скучати за ними.
Ну, така що.
Жалко расставаться. Я их выненчила.
Ксюха, только побачишь в компьютере звездочку, сразу набирай скайп.
According to some estimates, up to 250,000 Ukrainians are eligible to move to Israel under the law of return. That night, Sharansky gave a presentation to a group of Jewish people who hadn't quite made up their minds.
Во-первых, мне всегда очень радостно видеть людей, которые собираются ехать, а подумали, сколько поколений за вами стояло, мечтали, молились, думали, и вот этот день пришел.
So it's being held in this community center full of signs and posters for the Jewish Agency. One of them here, which is interesting, it says towns that are waiting for you in Israel, and it's got a bunch marked on the map, including a number of spots in the West Bank in the occupied Palestinian territory.
Подскажите, пожалуйста, для себя, для понимания, в свете всего, что творится вокруг Израиля сейчас, Сирия, Египет, Ливан, как это сказывается вообще на эмоциональной жизни израильтян? Ибо вокруг сейчас много бушует.
Террористические покушения, которые, конечно, не сравнить с тем террором, который был 12 лет назад, когда там взрывались люди в автобусах. И с тем террором покончили, и мы разрушили все центры церкви.
Спасибо большое.
Спасибо вам. Всего доброго.
Do you worry about creating Jewish Agency posters that do show housing opportunities in the West Bank, given that much of the world believes those settlements are illegal?
We don't do anything to convince him or her to go to Western Bank instead of Tel Aviv or instead of Netanyahu.
But what do you think about it?
I don't think that it is wise, and it's right for us to decide already now where will be the final borders between Israel and Palestinian state.
The housing minister in Israel has said before that he actually thinks, say, French Jews, that European Jews should move to the settlements to maintain their Jewish populations. Would you agree with that?
I am absolutely against any connection between Aliyah and politics.
We combed through Israeli government statistics and found that the proportion of new immigrants who end up in the West Bank is around 4%, but numbers are growing slowly year by year. We wanted to meet some of the new immigrants moving beyond the Green Line to the disputed territories that were occupied by Israel in 1967 and are known by Israelis as Judea and Samaria.
So there are now armed guards at all of the bus stops along this main road. Earlier today there was an attack and 3 Jewish settlers were injured.
In the settlement of Pedwell, we met up with a family that had just arrived from southern France.
all the family is French here.
All of them?
All family. On the road. It's the road of Ole Hadash here.
Ah, okay.
Okay.
It's Champs-Élysées.
The Champs-Élysées. How many people live in this area?
It's 3,000. Bye, Leitra. Tu lui as dit pour vendredi?
Oui.
Ah, ok.
How did you hear about Pedwell when you were in France?
On n'a jamais entendu parler de Pedwell jusqu'à ce qu'on nous propose la ville. On nous en a parlé avec ce qu'on appelle l'Alia de groupe. C'est une organisation.
So had you always planned to move to Israel? Was it always something you thought about?
Ça a été vraiment les événements qui ont fait en France. Après, je pensais pas partir aussi jeune. Je pensais faire ma vie en France et venir à la retraite.
On se sent plus en sécurité parce qu'il y a l'armée qui est tout autour. C'est sécurisé parce qu'il y a des barrières. Alors que dans les villes comme Haïfa, Netanyahu, Jérusalem, ce sont des villes où l'insécurité est peut-être plus importante parce qu'ils côtoient plus de Palestiniens et d'Arabes. Donc peut-être que...
And here there are no Arab neighborhoods nearby. A lot of the world thinks these settlements are illegal and that they shouldn't exist.
On part du principe où on a le droit d'exister, on a le droit d'être là, comme eux ont le droit d'être là.
Do you think you'll live in Israel forever?
C'est le but.
C'est le but. Ouais.
It's clear that some new immigrants are being encouraged to move to the occupied territories. So we went to meet the head of the Samaria Regional Council, the man in charge of administering Jewish settlements in the north part of the West Bank, to talk about the newly arrived European settlers.
אין ספק שבשנתיים האחרונות אנחנו רואים גל גדול של עלייה מאירופה, ובראש ובראשונה ממדינות במערב אירופה כגון צרפת, שמגיעים לכאן לשומרון וקובעים כאן את ביתן. אנחנו כמובן מאוד שמחים בזה ומעודדים את זה.
I see you've got a map there. Where exactly are most of the new immigrants choosing to settle?
הגיעו עולים לאזור יקיר, הגיעו עולים לאזור פדואל, הגיעו עולים לצפון השומרון, לאזור חיננית, לאזור שבי שומרון, מגיעים ללא מעט יישובים.
Much of the world thinks that where we are right now is part of an illegal occupation of the West Bank. Surely the immigrants who move here, do they feel nervous about being part of that?
אני חושב שהדיבורים הפוליטיים האלה על כבוש, לא כבוש, זה מאוד מיושן, זה דיבורים של שנות ה-90. אני חושב שהיום הציבור בעולם מבין את הבעיה, יש 200 סכסוכים עולמיים בערך, כרגע ברגעים אלו, הבעיה היא דאעש בסוריה ובעיראק, הבעיה היא לא כאן, שומרון זה הארץ התנ"ך, רוב העולם מאמין בתנ"ך, ובוודאי שכל מי שמכיר תנ"ך וגם מי שלא מאמין בו מבין שיש לנו שייכות לכאן, לאזור הזה של השומרון. בוודאי אלה שעולים לארץ, ככה שזה לא מהווה מכשול, אולי להפך.
Just nearby, quite recently, there was another attack on Jewish settlers.
אני אומר בחיוך שהאבסורד הוא שהיום צרפת היא הרבה יותר מסוכנת בגלל אותם מוסלמים רדיקליים, דווקא כאן בישראל ובשומרון הרבה יותר בטוח.
That may be the view from the settlements, but Israel's security is backed by military might and the ubiquitous presence of the Israeli Defense Force. In recent years, the Army says it's seen an increase in foreign volunteers, with many recruits coming through special programs for new immigrant soldiers.
We have just arrived at this park in the middle of Tel Aviv, and there are 650 kids gathered here today, all of them new immigrants, all of them either new soldiers or about to join the IDF. It's like a high school prom, but with half the people in IDF uniform. Are you going to be a combat soldier?
Yeah, of course. I have a gun and everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What kind of gun are you going to get?
I think it's M16. We're supposed to have it every day, every hour with us. So I hope everything will be okay.
Like you're never allowed to put the gun down?
No.
I was a police officer back in London.
Do you know where you're going to be stationed yet?
Not sure. They're the ones that decide all of that, but seeing as I've had a lot of experience in the dangerous areas in London, I'm sure when they see me in basic training and in advanced training, they'll know to put me in hopefully one of the harder areas.
Do you find that the immigrant soldiers are particularly passionate about being in the IDF?
Of course. They made a huge decision to move. Sometimes 6,000 miles away from the parents, from the home, leave everything behind.
They're passionate Zionists.
Exactly. Zionism, it's Zionism. It's their motivation. It's their personal journey to help Israel, to help themselves. And I think that we just need to thank you to those newly coming to Israel.
If Israeli projections are right, mass immigration will continue to feed the IDF with fresh recruits. But there's an enormous gap between the tens of thousands that have recently made the move from Europe and the exodus that some Israeli officials are predicting. To help understand that disconnect, we went to see Dov Maimon, who was commissioned by the Israeli government to write a report on Aliyah from France.
So how many people in Europe would be eligible under the law of return to move here?
3 million, 4 million maybe altogether. It could change the geopolitics.
What do you mean that it could change the geopolitics?
You know, the demography is the key of everything, as you know. Between the Jordan and the Mediterranean, this is the borders, 10 million people, about 500,000 Jews and 500,000 Arabs. And if we want to remain a democratic state, we have to have a majority of Jews in this place.
So you think that immigrants could turn the balance?
Absolutely sure. Already we have the birth rate among Arabs is decreasing and the birth rate among Jews is increasing. So it's already a change. The train of history is on its ways. Let's say that 500,000 of Jews will leave Europe for the next 15 years.
Last year, if you look at the numbers, you saw, say, 7,000 or 8,000 leaving Ukraine, about the same number leaving France. It seems hysterical to say 500,000 could leave.
First, 3 years ago, we have 2,000. 2 years ago, we have 5,000. Last year, we have 7,000. This year, we have 10,000. So it could go much faster. Charlie Hebdo, it could happen 1 or 2, 3 times, and then we have a kind of people decide to move.
But right now, the numbers coming, I mean, it's a drop in the bucket.
Your perspective is about 1 year. My perspective is 3,000 years. So we don't have the same perspective. This is a big difference.
For now, immigrants from Europe continue to arrive in Tel Aviv, and some officials still insist that a Jewish exodus is just around the corner, and that when it happens, Israel will be ready and waiting.